The myth of Pandora's box has endured for centuries, and its influence extends beyond just the realm of storytelling. The myth surrounds the first mortal woman named Pandora. She was created by the gods who gifted her with certain qualities. For instance, Aphrodite gave Pandora beauty, Hera gifted her curiosity, and Zeus gave her a mysterious heavy jar that she was advised never to open. And I'm sure you know how the story goes. Despite the warning, Pandora's curiosity consumed her, and she opened it, unleashing all of the misfortunes of the world. Disease, war, famine, and death were among the evils that spread across the earth. However, Pandora managed to close the jar before one final thing escaped, and that thing was hope. Now, the myth of Pandora's box, it speaks to universal themes that have plagued mankind since the dawn of time, such as why does evil exist, and what role does not only God play in our suffering, but what role do we play in our own suffering? The myth cautions against the dangers of human folly and suggests that our errors have lasting consequences that echo through the ages. There's a lot of onus that is placed on human beings in the outcome of their fate. Despite the myth's widespread recognition, it actually remains quite enigmatic and challenging for scholars to interpret. And part of the complexity of the myth lies within the ambiguity regarding the nature of hope and the moral implications of Pandora's actions. Hope is seen as a powerful counterweight to despair, a shining beacon of possibility that helps us to carry on in the face of adversity. Why would hope find itself in a box full of sinister evils like disease and war? Is the myth suggesting that hope is in fact evil? Now, Nietzsche himself thought of hope as a double-edged sword. Zeus did not want man to throw his life away, no matter how much the other evils might torment him, but rather to go on letting himself be tormented anew. To that end, he gives man hope. In truth, hope is the most evil of evils because it prolongs man's torment. Many religious traditions urge their followers to be hopeful, typically for some sort of promise of salvation. But I've always found hope to be a troubling concept for myself personally because especially in the religious context, it's difficult to parse to what extent hope is any different from desire. Desire is often viewed as a source of suffering and an obstacle to spiritual enlightenment. Meanwhile, hope is praised and considered virtuous. So how do we account for this apparent contradiction? And what happens when our hopeful expectations fail to come to fruition? Hope seems like a very risky game to play because if your hopes fail to materialize, you almost seem to be in a worser predicament had you not been hopeful to begin with. And so I'm really questioning whether hope is in fact a force for good or whether it simply masks our despair. A central theme of Pandora's box is the consequence of curiosity. We're led to view the actions of Pandora in a contemptible way, but the myth is sort of difficult to reconcile with because she was always destined to fail. When the gods created her, they also gifted her with curiosity. Despite the popular reading of this myth that hope was actually meant to be released, but we prolonged evil by having it be sealed in the jar, I actually think that hope remained in the jar because it's symbolic of Pandora's condition. She was always hopeless, and that's why hope didn't escape. And in fact, I would take it a step further and perhaps say that because Pandora symbolizes the first mortal woman, she's actually meant to symbolize all of humanity. And although this is a bit of a darker interpretation, perhaps it's pointing to the hopelessness of the human condition. In many ways, the myth of Pandora's box parallels Eve and the forbidden fruit, and there's also parallels to Sita and the Ramayana. The myth presents a striking likeness between God and humanity. In Greek mythology, the gods were often portrayed as flawed and all too human, exhibiting traits such as jealousy, anger, and deceitfulness. And it is perhaps for this reason that Zeus, the king of the gods, punishes humanity so harshly. The problem of evil, it's a long-standing philosophical and theological challenge, and it stems from the apparent contradiction between an all-powerful and all-benevolent God with the existence of evil and suffering in the world. If God possesses both unlimited power and boundless goodness, then it follows that God would have both the ability and the will to prevent evil. However, the presence of evil suggests that such a deity does not exist or may not possess the qualities attributed to it, specifically the quality of being all benevolent. A possible conclusion that we can draw from Pandora's box is that if there is a God, this God certainly is not all good, but rather this God is just like us. God has the same character as us, in the sense that God is a contributing factor to the dichotomy of good and evil that exists in our world. And the nuances of hope lie in the precursors of hope's existence. Hope must exist because there is chaos and because there is suffering. As John Muir once said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. That concludes my thoughts on Pandora's box. I think it's a fascinating myth, and I'd be interested to know your interpretation of it. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you to my top patrons, and I will see you all in my next video.